Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hello, preschool peeps and patrons.
Hi, peeps and patrons.
Why peeps and patrons? Because Patreon.
Yes.
But you know, if you go to patreon.com/how preschool teachers do it and you look at our tiers of membership, I have to tell you that one of the things we are proudest of are the names that we came up with.
We did come up with some really cute names.
For the levels. We're cute. Tiers of membership. Yeah. We did. Actually, I can't take really any credit. It was all Allison. Allison's so good at this sort of thing.
I know. I said, give me a few days to think of it. And that's what I did. And I would just be driving around and be like, oh, I got one. So.
And she would text me and I would say, how does she do that? I don't know how she came up with it. It was just so brilliant. It just
pops in my head.
So if you go to Patreon and you look for us to see the different tiers of membership, which in US dollars start with $5 and then it goes $5. Tell me if I'm wrong here, Allison.
It's $5, $15, $20, and then $25.
Something like that, yeah.
Something
Isn't
like
it
that.
$5, $10?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
So at any rate, we have these tiers of membership and each tier gets a different set of benefits, and the benefits increase the higher you go. And it's just, we really wanted to be able to connect you all and do more with the preschool peeps that we have. And we can't do more without the support of the people on Patreon, because all of this is time and money. So y'all wouldn't believe how much we pay for the software.
I know.
So at any rate, to help support that, people become patrons on Patreon, and lots of podcasts do that, but we're particularly proud of these names. So Allison, go ahead and tell them what tier they could belong to.
You could become a preschool people, a peep pal, a priority peep, or a VI peep.
I'm not sure which I love more, priority peep or VI peep. Not sure.
I know, I like them all.
So folks, go ahead, Patreon, patreon.com/how preschool teachers do it. If you go to Patreon, you can also search for, in the search thing, you can search for us and consider becoming one of our patrons and supporting this work that you all believe in, because you continue to listen. And speaking of listening, we're going to be talking and listening about inclusion this week, because Allison and I have some questions about how things are handled in the United States. I don't know if it's this way around the world, but it's because of how our federal funding runs for special education. So we're going to talk about inclusive education, and I want to define that for everybody. Inclusive education is when we're educating children in appropriate, but are basically general education classes in schools with high quality instruction, interventions, and support, so that all the children can be successful in the core curriculum at their developmental level. And as a kind of more brief definition, inclusive education means different and diverse students of all different sorts of abilities and challenges learning side by side in the same classroom. The children are side by side. There are many benefits to inclusive education. Children learn acceptance of all people in inclusive education. Young children who do not have special needs, disabilities, all that, have just grown up then with people who do, and it isn't, there isn't so much bias, hopefully, as they get older. They also learn so much from each other.
I have for each other.
They do. I have consulted in early childhood settings that are integrated or inclusive educational settings where they have general education and special education students in the same classes, usually with two co-teachers. One is a general education teacher, the other is a special education teacher, and they work together. And the children have their therapies and whatever other support services they need in that location. And the children working together it's just amazing the gifts they give to each other.
Yeah, it really is amazing.
But it's not the most common thing in the United States to have settings in especially preschool years that do that.
Yeah.
The way the federal funds work in the United States is that children under the age of 3, before their 3rd birthday, can be evaluated by and qualify for early intervention services. Early intervention services, because the children are so young, the way the funds work is that the early interventionists, the people who come and work with the children to support their developmental needs, they will go wherever you need them to go. So, like, for example, when I ran a private early childhood program, we had children who needed early intervention, and the early interventionists came to our program during the day and worked with that child in our program. Other people have them come to their homes or they meet somewhere. It's done very much at the convenience of the child and family. And then all of a sudden, the child's 3rd birthday comes and the federal funding changes.
Yes.
And now, those children, to receive the support services, usually have to be taken from these early childhood settings where they've spent the beginning of their life and put in a special education program at public school.
Yeah. With different therapists that they're not used to. Yeah.
Right. Because there hasn't been cooperation across the two sectors.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge for the children and the families. And I'm not sure why we do that. I'm not sure why all of a sudden the whole system has to change.
I don't understand it either, because we talk so often about like consistency is key, how children should be comfortable in the environment that they're learning in. And say you have a special needs child who's in the program or a child care center or preschool or whatever they are in, who's comfortable there with the teachers, comfortable there with the students, their friends are there, maybe their siblings also go there. Maybe it's convenient for the family to drop off there. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? We got to rip you out of that program. And we're going to put you over here in this public school. And you got to take the bus now to school and all this stuff. Like, why? Why are you doing that to them?
I also want to sort of flip the coin a little and point out something else. In preschools that have not been designed for helping children with disabilities and special education needs. There are a variety of reasons why after the age of 3 some of the children remain in that setting. Some families are not at the point yet where they want to have them evaluated. Some families decide, no, I'm going to get private therapies because I really like having my child in this school. I don't want to go to the public school system with this yet. There are a variety of reasons why in our early childhood programs, classrooms have children with special education needs and disabilities, and there's no special education teacher there, and there's no therapist there, which means not only do the children not benefit from that, but the teachers don't. Because here's the thing. If the systems were set up so that there was a cooperation between what's been set up in public schools and the private centers that are often very much needed by families because of their hours, because of their location and proximity to where people work, for a variety of reasons, the private centers are needed by families, or the family chooses like a family child care setting where it's more home-like. It's done in someone's home. That's what they want to choose. Because there's no crossover of these professionals who understand special education therapies and disabilities and all that stuff, the teachers are left floundering. They don't have a resource.
Yes, because in the public school, at any point in time, if there's a child in my class, I could go to any number of special education teachers and say, hey, this child's having trouble with this. Even if it's something that they wouldn't even qualify for, I say, this child's having trouble with this. Do you have any tips for me on how I can help this child through this issue? At any point in time, there's a number of people. There's a child study team. There's a bunch of professionals there that can help me through that. In the private sector, say at a child care center or a Catholic school or a religious school, if I have that question, there's no one for me to go to. And I can't call the public school and say, hey, I just have a question on how I can best serve this child. You can't, they're not going to help you. Okay. Which I don't understand why they won't. That's where I feel like there should be some sort of bridge between the two. Here's a student who's in a child care center who eventually is going to probably be in your public school for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. So why wouldn't you want to help them now? Instead of saying, hey, no. If he wants help, he has to come here. I don't get that.
I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that there has to be a bridge.
Yes.
And maybe our preschool peeps who are listening live in a country where there is a bridge.
I would love to hear how that works. Yes.
It's not so much here.
Not here. Yeah.
And if you are in the United States and you have a bridge, let us know, because that's not where we are. No. It doesn't exist after the age of 3. And, I feel like in so many ways, perhaps the system can be looked at to determine how can it actually serve more children. I think it's challenging enough that so many children with special education needs are not identified.
Well, there's that, yes.
They're challenging enough, but once we know, or once the teacher knows I could use a little help or advice, it would be really great to be able to just reach out. Now, maybe some of you live in areas where you can reach out, and you reach out to your public school and they do help you, and that's wonderful, but it really needs to be standardized. It needs to be, this is how we're going to operate everywhere. This is part of the federal mandate.
Yeah, I also wonder why this early intervention has to end at age 3. Like, if we're saying public school here in the United States starts at around age 5, why can't that early intervention be like, it's birth through age 5? And I understand you have a lot of cases and it's overloaded, but why can't there be an option for that? Like, I don't want to send my son or daughter to the public school. Okay, I'm going to opt to extend it somehow, and it ends at age 5. And then at age 5, when they're meant to go to kindergarten, then, okay, now it ends because you should be in the kindergarten by now, or whatever it is. Why this age 3? Why is it age 3? Like, why does it have to be like that?
It was decided age 3 on a governmental.
I know.
Maybe 3 because they start to become a little more independent and
yeah, but I also think,
but if we're talking about children with developmental needs, that isn't necessarily the case.
Correct. And I also think there are some, like, we live in an area that's fortunate to have the special ed program start at age 3 in our public school, but I imagine some places in the United States do not have that. Like you have schools in other states that go by the county. It's a county district rather than a town district where we live.
Yeah, but the federal law, the IDEA law, says that at age 3, special education services begin and early intervention ends, no matter where you are.
I know. But what I'm saying is, like, around here, the public school might be right around the corner. So your child care center might also be around the corner. In other states, like, say, West Virginia, where I used to live, the district is by the county. The county could be quite large. So you are sending your child to a child care center, and that might be around the corner. But that public school might be a good half-hour bus ride or more away, So that's where, like, that's not fair to that child to sit on a bus for over an hour a day. Or for that parent, like, now after work, I got to drive an hour away or a half hour away to get my son or daughter out of school. Like, that's a lot.
It is. It's not even a realistic expectation.
It's not, yeah.
I have a dear friend of mine named Lisa Friedman, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind the shout out because she does her own work and her own blogging and teaching about special education and inclusion. Inclusion is her specialty. And I'm going to take one of her phrases that actually I've seen often quoted on social media. She talks about the fact that inclusion is not a one-day program or an event. Inclusion is a way of life.
Yes.
So if inclusion is a way of life, but we don't really support that way of life from the time you're 3 years old, do we really have it? I don't know. And I also recognize that more public schools have pre-K
Yeah.
and perhaps 3-year-old classrooms than ever before.
Yes.
And that hopefully that will continue because there are people who really need that and should be able to avail themselves of a free early childhood education. Early childhood education is very important. I understand the need for this. So there are some schools where those 3 and 4-year-olds who are identified as having particular needs are in a place where those therapists are and where those teachers are. What about the other children?
Right.
That's what I just keep thinking. What about the children who are not in those public school settings? And inclusion is so important. We want children to be together with their same age peers as much as possible. The federal law does talk about putting children in the least restrictive environment so that they are being educated as much of the day as possible with their same age peers, which is so important for them in so many ways, socially, emotionally, and academically. It's all the ways.
Yeah.
And I really do understand when families, those who are ready to have their children evaluated, and they go and their child is 3 years old and they go and have them evaluated, they have the right to go and see the class that the child would be potentially put in. And I really do understand when families are like, I really like having my child with children with differing abilities, many, a huge range of abilities. I've had families say that to me when I was a program director, that they're hesitant to bring them to the program in the public school because they liked the fact that not all of their friends had these challenges and that they were being accepted in this room. And I totally get it. I just think you're right, Allison. I think the key is a bridge. I think you said it perfectly.
Right.
The key is a bridge. We need to build that bridge. So we always try and land on what do we want people to think about or to do or what do we advise. So I encourage you to reach out and try to build bridges.
Yeah.
Maybe with the public school system that you have, you never know what they would be willing to do unless you reach out. Maybe with specialists in your area.
Yeah.
If you can set up some sort of system of occasional consultation for the teachers in your program. There may be pediatricians in your area who can help you to source things like resources and people. I encourage you to look into organizations that work with special education teachers.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of one in particular through which I take coursework. Let me just look up their official name. They'll be so upset that I don't know this. They listen. But I forget things like official names, and I want to get it right. So it's the National Association of Special Education Teachers.
Yeah,
there's a national. I'm sure they're called like NASET or NASET, because we love acronyms in education. National Association of Special Education Teachers has publications and resources and things. You can do research and be educated if you would like in things related to special education. It's one of those things that I think we talk about, like you have to be ADA compliant. You have to be the Disabilities Act compliance. You have to have ramps and you have to have doorways that wheelchairs can fit through. And that's 100% yes. And then when are we going to expand that definition of being inclusive
when is that going to
children with things like developmental needs?
Because I feel like we're really behind the times with that one.
I agree. So reach out for resources. Try to build those bridges, whether it has to be public or private, because everybody struggles. The teachers, the children, the families. And that's not okay. It's part of our ethical obligation to work with children of differing abilities and to help them to succeed. And if the teachers are struggling and the families are struggling, the success of the child struggles. Okay, so food for thought there. And we also, I hope you stick with us as we shout out different areas that listen to us or different places around the world and the United States. In the world, we have a repeat. A repeat. So, we go and dig into where in that place. So around the world, in our top three, I think it was, top three, was the Philippines.
Hello,
Hello, people of the Philippines. Hi, Philippines. And within the Philippines, our software that gives us these statistics says the majority of listeners or watchers on Facebook, who knows, are from Metro Manila.
Hello, Metro Manila.
Hello. In the United States, we have a state we have not shouted out before in our top 5, and that is Idaho. Idaho. You have to spread the word, people in Idaho, that you reach the top 5 and you want to stay there. So please tell your friends, your colleagues, families that you know to listen to howpreschoolteachersdoit.com and to check out our offerings on Patreon. Patreon.com/howpreschoolteachersdoit. And we will catch you next time on this podcast. Bye.